with reference to the phrase that could reasonably be construed to demonstrate clear intention, the court found that it is plain an objective standard and that requires a reasonable person test. So the first answer was that we are referring, or it has been accepted or determined by the court that is an objective test, an objective standard. Whether paragraphs A to C of subsection 1 should be read disjunctively or conjunctively, the court found that on a disjunctive reading, in other words, if one could have read an or between paragraphs B and C, section 10 would prohibit mere private communication, which could reasonably be construed to demonstrate a clear intention to be hurtful. The Constitutional Court found, Mr. Chair, that this would be an overly extensive and impermissible infringement of freedom of expression. And the court then, among others, in this regard, found that paragraphs A to C should be read conjunctively, in other words, as if there was an and between paragraphs B and C of that subsection. When we get to the issue of hurtfulness, or for the word hurtful, and the question before the court was whether it's impermissibly vague, the court found that the hurtful on a conjunctive reading of the provision is redundant and contributes to lack of clarity of the provision itself. The term hurtful is, that the court found, is vague and reaches the rule of law. The rule of law in this regard, in short, Mr. Chairperson, is that the words used by the legislature to enact laws must be clear and unambiguous. With regard to the question whether the provision leads to an unjustifiable limitation of section 16 of the Constitution, the court found that the limitation of hurtful speech go beyond the justified limitation of hate speech and is therefore unconstitutional. If I may conclude, Mr. Chair, the bill does not use the term, if we go back to our hate speech bill then, and draw this conclusions or decisions made by the Constitutional Court towards our hate speech bill, the bill does not use the term hurtful when it comes to hate speech, but the Constitutional Court found that the expansion of the listed grounds to include similar grounds does not render the definition of prohibited grounds unconstitutional. The extended prohibited grounds are narrowly crafted to fulfill the purpose of the hate speech prohibition. Accordingly, the Constitutional Court concluded that the limitation is proportionate in an open and democratic society. The challenge based on the limitation of section 16, therefore, Mr. Chair, did not succeed. And then if one looks at clause 4.1, Roman 1 and 2 in the bill as introduced, is disjunctive. So, in other words, the Commission for the Committee, my apologies, will have to take careful consideration to the provisions of this clause to ensure constitutional court compliance as per the Fulani judgment. The judgment expressed in, or the court expressed in paragraph 3 of the judgment that furthermore, and critically, a disjunctive reading would render the impugned provision unconstitutional, since merely hurtful speech with no element of hatred or incitement could, for example, constitute hate speech. This would be an impermissible infringement on the freedom of expression, as it would bar speech that disturb, offends, and shocks. With regard to the listed grounds, as included in section 4.1a, of the introduced bill, lists those specific grounds upon which hate speech may be premised. The Fulani judgment only dealt with hate speech against the LGBT+ community. The judgment specifically noted the broadness of the prohibited grounds, but undertook no further analysis in this regard. The judgment also then stated in paragraph 128 of the judgment that this analysis is best left with Parliament to deal with. Parliament must therefore delve deeper into the clause of the bill. The Department did publish amendments to Papuda and comments are currently being evaluated. The Kulani judgment, while providing a reading in to address the Constitution invalid clause, gave Parliament 24 months to cure that defect. In reviewing the Papuda amendments, an amendment to address the order of the Constitutional Court will be drafted. This is merely to indicate to the committee that although the Kulani judgment is fairly or became available fairly recently, the department is already giving attention to that matter. And that brings me to the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. du Preez. So, DM, does it mean that you still have to draft a bill that will take into account the judgment of the Constitutional Court before public comments can be invited by Parliament?
Chair, no. The Constitutional Court judgment was about Papuda, so we need to amend Papuda. There is already some amendments that were published for public comment by the department, and we will be for a Papuda amendment bill. We will be including those provisions in that bill. So there's nothing more that needs to be done for the hate crimes, hate speech bill. As I said, and as I think Mr. du Preez has said, that it is, we believe it's consistent with the Constitutional Court judgment. The only issue is changing a or to an and in the one section, so it is read conjunctively. Also, yeah, disjunct, yeah, anyway. But that you should be able to then proceed with the bill to advertise for public comment. The bill was advertised for public comment by the last Parliament, but I would imagine that you would want to advertise it again because it's been so much time since then. But it's effectively the same bill that was introduced. But basically, in short, nothing more we feel we need to do from the department. We believe that Parliament, the National Assembly, is free to proceed with the bill, its consideration of the bill.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Members, any questions, comments? Honorable Swart, Honorable Jelle, in that order.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the DM and the presentation and for the input. I agree with the proposal that given the long time period that has passed, that and in view of this, can you hear me, Chair? There seems to be...
Yes.
My camera's just off because I've got a bad connection. My apologies.
Honorable Newport Wachans, can you mute yourself? Proceed, Honorable Swart.
Yes, that I've heard the presentation carefully, and we've come in view of the fact that this bill is now before us as a new Parliament. I would support the view that there should be public comment, particularly in view of the judgment and the possible amending of words here and there. I think we've received a lot of input, and one needs to look carefully. I don't want to express too many views at this stage, but I think that we as the committee will need to study the Kulani judgment, study the proposed amendments, and then once we've heard all the public comments, taken that into consideration, then consider the impact of this. I think, as the DM pointed out, the hate crimes aspect is not too contentious. The hate speech is more the contentious side of things. And I think the issue around, which was alluded to just in passing, that the Kwelani judgment actually relates to Papuda. There obviously are huge concerns about that, but that's not before us. That is still with the department. But there might be aspects which overlap, which might have to be considered. So, Chair, at that stage, that would be, from my perspective, before I go to the WIPS meeting, just to welcome the input and say we need the relevant information to, and then I would support advertising for public comment so that we can then take the process forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Honorable Swart, for staying with us beyond 10 o'clock. We know that you are late for the WIPS meeting. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Will you excuse me? Thank you, Chair.
Yes, you are excused. Honorable Nomathemba Maseko Jele.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues. Chairperson, I just want to thank the DM and the team for their presentation. And without waste of time, I think I would agree with Honorable Swart that let's take this bill for public comments, and also in consideration with all that the DM has just mentioned in terms of Papuda and all that. But also, secondly, Chair, I would want to request Mr. Dupree, when you come back, when we begin to discuss this bill, Chair, I think there are some references that he normally do when it comes to, he would say, for example, as section 12 or section 10, this is what it's like we are agreeing with it or something like that. But I would request that, Chair, if it's possible, if it's not too much, where he is going to mention that as in section 12, can he just give us a bit of maybe summary of that, because we are not, we are still fundis, you know. So if we're going to discuss and they make a referral and, you know, we just think that this might be saying this, and one can make mistakes, and also the input that one will do maybe might not be the one that by then is in line with what would be a good I would say input. So in short, Chair, I'm saying I agree with the colleagues. Let's take it for public. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Maybe you will have to repeat your instructions when we are processing the bill. I think
Yes.
I think you will have to repeat those instructions so that at that time we will be dealing with the bill. We would be interested to have them so that we can have we can take them as committee instructions to the department. Thank you very much, Honorable Jelle. Honorable Nevot Drachens.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to everybody on the platform. And thank you for the presentation. I would like to add my voice to what Honorable Jelle has just said. Some of us are new, and if this is brought to us, so for example, like it was done with a Word document with a column to explain where this is coming from and why it's being amended, that would be great for us to see the bill, and then you know, the wording or what the suggested changes are, and for that reason, yeah, that would be, you know, yeah, exactly that's what I mean. Anyway, and then next, I would like to know the deadline. I'm not seeing the deadline. When is the deadline given by the Constitutional Court for Parliament to have completed this process? And we recently passed the Cyber Crimes Bill. I would like to know then that hate speech on social media, is that mentioned in either the act or the bill? Because that is something that is on the increase, particularly on social media. So I'm wondering, is that something we can include in this bill, or is it something that needs to be added to the Cyber Crimes Act? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I would ask members not to jump into discussions of the bill before it is published. And I think we will have an opportunity to engage with the bill. And the court gave us 24 months from the date of the judgment. 24 months, yes. And so we have 24 months, but I think because of the interest on the issue, we must not wait for the 24 months. I think we need to deal with this bill as of yesterday. So if I read the mood correctly, we will publish for public comments urgently, and then thereafter we will start processing the bill. Because the challenge that we have had is when you wait until, let's say, 4 months before the deadline set by the court. In fact, we are compromising the NCOP and the president, because after the NCOP processes, it still has to go to the president for assent, and the president often would also have to go through the bill and check its constitutionality before he assents to the bill. So it's important that when bills that have got constitutional court deadlines arrive, we must treat them expeditiously so that we allow all the other houses and the presidency also to do their constitutional duty. And South Africans expect that most of these bills should be dealt with expeditiously. So we have always been, as the Deputy Minister said, we have always been ready to process the bill, but we could not do so because we were awaiting the judgment of the Constitutional Court. Because if we had proceeded and passed a bill only to be declared unconstitutional, it would have been reckless on our part. But I think what we will do is to publish and invite comments as soon as possible and then process the bill as soon as we can. Ms. Portia Serote, are you with the department?
No, I'm just an activist at the ground level.
We have not yet reached that stage, Ms. Serote.
Okay. No problem, thank you.
What often happens is that when we have published for public comments, then we do public hearings. And during public hearings, then it's when we interact with activists and every interested member of society. Thank you very much for your understanding. I think, members, we are in agreement that we have to publish the bill for public comments urgently, and then we will start inviting members of the public to make comments. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister and Mr. Dupreez, for the presentation. Can we now go to...
Chair, can I just say a few words in closing or responding?
Okay.
No, just firstly, this is a bill on its own, the Hate Crimes, Hate Speech Bill. What the Constitutional Court was considering was provisions of PAPUDA. So the 24 months is for PAPUDA to be amended. And that will be a separate amendment that the department will bring. There will be other aspects that have been worked on and have already been put out for public comment. for Papuda. So this is on its own. We feel, though, that the judgment has now made it easier for you because it has set the boundaries of hate speech. Just to say, in answer to Honorable Nivo Drushin, that there's a provision in the bill, I think it's 4.1b. There's a specific issue relating to electronic communications, so that is covered. There is a list in the bill of in the hate crime section on categories that if you are prejudiced because of persons belonging to intolerance of the victim, belonging to any of these groups, then it's a hate crime. Those categories go from A to Q. Under hate speech, there's a similar list of categories, but 2 of them are not listed under hate speech. And they are, just to point them out, they are occupation or trade. So you commit a hate crime if you go and attack hawkers, truck drivers, sex workers, or whatever. And then there's also, it's a hate speech if you do something, commit a crime against somebody because of their political affiliation. So if you attack somebody because they're ANC, DA, EFF, that can be a hate crime. Those provisions, 2 provisions, are not in the categories for hate speech because we didn't want to, we thought it would be limiting free speech too much, that you may not be able to criticize politicians if occupation or trade was there, that you may not be able to criticize members of other parties. So that's why those are not there. Just with the categories, as Mr. Dupree has said, I mean, the listed grounds in section 16 are race, ethnicity, gender, or religion. The Constitutional Court in Kwelane said that sexual orientation can be added. We would hope and believe that they would agree to the list from A to O under the hate speech provisions, but just to highlight that as a point. But thanks, Chair. I hope the committee can proceed speedily with the bill, and hopefully the judgment will make it easier to finalize what the provisions of hate speech as a crime should be. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Honorable Jailer, is it a point of order or what?
It's an old one, Chair. Apologies.
Thank you very much. Can you lower your hand? Thank you very much. Thank you, TM, and thank you to your team for the good work. Let me now invite the DG of Justice, Advocate Dr. Mashabane, to lead the presentation on the Master of the High Court.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Deputy Minister and honorable members of the committee. I hope I'm audible, Chair.
No, you're audible. We can see you. You're dressed very nicely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm supported or in the delegation. I'm with the Chief Master, Advocate Martin Mafojane, and is accompanied by the senior managers in the Master's office. Without taking much time, I'll request that they fly the slides, and Advocate Mafojane and his team, they will take us through the Master's presentation. Just the broad thrust of the presentation, I think we'll look at the mandate of the Masters and also then deal briefly with the specific legislations and their provisions that governs the work of the Master's office. And of course, then we'll look at the efforts to automate the Master's services and within the broader strategic framework of the department. Advocate Mafojane, with the permission of the chair, you can proceed with the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair, morning, Deputy Minister, and honorable members of the committee. I will be presenting on behalf of the Masters branch, indicating the state of the branch where we are. As the Director General has indicated,
Advocate Mafojane, can you briefly show your face and then you can close it so that maybe you can increase your bandwidth, but it will be important that we see you.
Thanks, Chair. I clicked to show my, if it's not showing.
It's blank.
Could it be the light in? Just a second, Chair, let me try it.
Yeah, ngahle kandulele uma kunjalo.
Maybe Advocate Mafojane, you can proceed, but maybe before you finish, then we would want to see you. So that
I will try to ensure that I'm this.
Yeah, so that South Africans can know who is the Chief Master.
Chair, if he can't put his camera on, we can maybe put up a picture of him.
Yeah, that will also be good because we want South Africans to know him.
Thanks, Chair. I will ensure that I come and my face is seen before I end the session.
Thank you very much. You can proceed.
The content of the presentation, Chair, outlines that we will be dealing with the mandate of the masters and the footprint as to the number of offices across the country, the number of personnel that we have to execute that mandate, and we will indicate the applicable legislation under which we are operating. We will indicate and share with the committee the various 5 areas of services where the masters are rendering services within the deceased estate, the trust, the insolvency, which covers insolvencies and liquidation, the guardians fund, and curatorship. We will touch on general automation and the progress thereof as to where we are up to this stage with the development and the intended piloting and thereafter rollout. We would have wished to have gone past this stage by now. We will outline the key priorities and deal with the risks and challenges that are relating to our automation and our mitigating factors, and generally the risks that the branch has insofar as its provision of service. Next slide. The mandate of the masters branch, generally the master, it's a creature of statute. It exists because there is specific legislation that gave birth or necessitated the creation of an office of the masters. And key legislations that are applicable would be the Administration of Estates Act, the Insolvency Act, the Companies Act, insofar as the chapter that is not amended of the 1971 Companies Act and the 2008 Companies Act. The closed corporation, though amended, there are still closed corporations in existence, and the Trust Properties Control Act. The Master's Office, therefore, serves the public in respect of the regulation and supervision of the administration of deceased estates, the regulation and supervision of insolvent estates, the administration of the Guardians Fund, and the registration and supervision of trusts. It also deals with this in the next slide, the supervision of curators, tutor, and administrator, and the appointment of impartial and capable persons as trustees and liquidators in those estates. Once death has occurred, the master can only then exercise the receipt of a will which is valid, and ensure the safeguarding of such a will once it is accepted by the master, and ensures that documentation relating to the administration of estates that are coming from the liquidation and distribution accounts are kept safe, and also in the liquidation of companies. The master will also deal with inquiries from the executors, the attorneys, and the beneficiaries insofar as they have interest in a particular matter that is reported and handled by the master. So we close that slide by basically saying the role of the master, it's more regulatory, supervisory, and advisory and administrative in nature. Next slide. The footprint of the masters, because this office was created along and even by the definition of its long name, the Master of the High Court, this office was then initially at or near the seat of the High Court. And currently we are at 15 masters offices countrywide. In the democratic dispensation, additional masters offices were created closer to the local divisions of Johannesburg. And after and whilst there was planning for the development and establishment of the High Court in Polokwane, Durban as well. And I think these were informed largely because of the population in those and the existence of the High Courts there. In the next slide, we continue that Gqeberha was also established in 2013, the Master's Office in Gqeberha, as well as in Nelspruit. I must mention, Chair, that due to the demand in the size of Mpumalanga and there being a local division in the Middelburg, we are considering to acquire or started an office, and we hope we will establish and get funding and capacity for the master's office in Middelburg. We don't want it to be a service point. We want it to be a fully fledged master's office. We were granted space and have since July started to deploy an official and assistant master there, and we are rotating as we source them from a variety of our offices countrywide. The other concept that tried to ensure that the master's offices are accessible was to try and declare the 402 magistrates' offices as service points with limited jurisdiction. So we can then move to the next slide that speaks to staff complement. The approved structure is made out of 1,285, but for this current year, the funded structure is 1,123 due to resources and funding, money not being available. Through the past 3-4 years, we had to suppress certain posts, and 162 posts are suppressed currently, and the current warm bodies are 1,025. Our vacancy rate is just under 10% at 9. We are currently busy filling various posts that we have advertised. The DG had indicated that my senior team would be joining me, but we are so thinly spread out. At the top of the branch management is the chief master and 2 chief directors. The other chief director is acting and is busy with the interviews for the office manager in the office of the chief master, and the other chief director. We are in fact testing the trust online registration, and she is attending to that project. So that's how thinly spread we are in the top management of the branch. Next slide. Now, The laws that are governing the work that the masters does in the deceased estate and the purpose thereof is outlined largely to regulate and supervise the administration of estates. And we are mentioning the Administration of Estates Act, the Interstate Succession Act, the Wills Act, and the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act. Under insolvencies and liquidations is to regulate the supervision of insolvent estates and the liquidation of companies and close corporation. There we are largely governed by the very old Insolvency Act 24 of 1936, the Companies Act, and as I indicated, the section or chapter 14 of the Companies Act of 1973. Whilst the act is repealed, that section was retained, and it deals with the liquidation of companies and the Close Corporation Act. Curatorship, we regulate the supervision, we regulate the regulation and supervision of curatorship estates and the appointment of curators, tutors, and administrators. And largely, it's the Administration of Estates Act, the Mental Health Act, and Rule 57 of the Rules of the High Court. Next slide. The registration and the supervision of trust, we perform duties that are prescribed by the Trust Properties Control Act 57 of 1988. Not all trusts would be trusts that are falling under this legislation. We know and are aware that there's just been a clouding of a space or an area where the communal property associations are now also people trying to register them as trust, and that creates a bit of a problem. The Guardians Fund, which is a chapter in the Administration of Estates Act, we're dealing with the administration of the Guardians Fund, and that chapter is chapter 5 of the Act.
It does appear like we have lost Advocate Mafojane, Chair.
I think the problem might be on your side, DJ, because we can.
Oh, we have him.
Okay.
It always happens, DJ.
My apologies, Chair.
No, that's fine. I think it happened with me even yesterday. Everybody could hear you, but I could not because of ESCOM. Proceed, Advocate Mafojane.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, we deemed it also necessary to share that the duties and powers that these pieces of legislation puts on the masters can be executed and done by the masters, the deputy master, and the assistant master in line with the definition of the master in the Administration of Estates Act. And should we be failing to execute these duties, there are indeed very serious consequences that are inclusive of high litigation against the government, and the citizenry will not be happy with the fact that services aren't rendered. And that's the state of nature that we want to change, and the perception and the image. Now, under the deceased estates, as we just elaborate slightly more, I've dealt with the acceptance of the valid will. And depending on the value, whether it's above or below 250,000, it will determine whether we issued a letter of executorship or letter of authority. It must be mentioned that these amounts are not thumbsucked, are determined by the minister as provided by the regulations to can determine them. And they have been changing over the time. So we have heard of people requesting that they be increased, but then one has to be careful in considering the appropriateness of the request and the timing thereof. We oversee the administration of the estate by ensuring that the liquidation and distribution accounts are submitted. the law requires that this be done within 6 months. There is a bigger challenge that we have with where the LND is not submitted within 6 months from the time of appointment. The law provides for a request for extension. But this is one area that we will also in the long term have to monitor closely and ensure that it's better managed, because some of the estates go for years and years. We protect in the interest of minors in estates where the minors are the beneficiaries. And we have an agreement and a relationship with the Legal Aid South Africa, where they are to participate and assist and ensure in the protection of the interests of the minors. This ensures that we are aligned to Section 28 of the Constitution insofar as making the interest of the child paramount in matters that are affecting the child. Now, in the next slide, the automation of the deceased estates. Quite clearly, Chair, the situation is, and I think this was the question that, a comment that also came yesterday, the paperless estate administration system, the PEACE, was developed around 2013-14. We were rolling it out. This system differs largely to what we're doing now. Then the aim and objective was to try and ensure once people come and report an estate, the documents are put into the system, into the portal. The online registration that we are currently dealing with, which I will come to later on, it's where people remotely would submit their documentation and the reporting documents would then be entered into the system. We took some longer time to move from the PEACE to what we are developing currently. So the PEACE is a computerized administration process in the deceased estate. It has been rolled out to all 15 masters offices and to approximately 290 service points being the magistrates' court offices. And the rolling out of this is an ongoing project. However, it's limited by the availability of the resources to can spread it to all the magistrates' court act. Next offices. Next slide. So the estates that are reported at a service point, being a magistrate's point, a court, would be those less than 250 and no will, and these would then be linked to, and the ones linked to the service points would then be linked to the master's office, where the appointment letters are not done by the officials in the magistrate's court. They are receiving the document to lessen the traveling distance and space, and then are sent to the relevant master's office, and the relevant master's office and assistant master would then consider the documents and determine whether or not the appointment letters are to be done. The deceased online then project, what we are now embarking upon, and have the system has been developed. We are at testing it. We would have preferred to have tested slightly earlier in this year, but we are at a phase where we are at testing. This will then ensure the following, and I need to slightly explain it to be saying, when a person reports the estate having sourced the document from our website and completed and scanned them and submitted them, that then ensures that the record upon which the master relied to do the appointment in the deceased estate has been submitted remotely, not in connivance or by some official, or that it's going to disappear. It is available, it is in the system, and it is a record that then would show what the master had relied upon to do this. We believe this is an important move that will reduce people having to go and queue at the various offices of the master, but most importantly, the records will never be missing as to the records that informed the appointment. In the trust, in the next slide, we just give a background that there are two types of trust, the inter vivos trust and the testamentary trusts. That the testamentary trust is a trust that one would create in a will, and once the will has been accepted, the trust would then later be formed, but whilst people are alive, can also register an inter vivos trust. There is a fee payable. It is not payable to the offices of the master. It's paid at the bank into the account of the vote of the department, but then the person has to produce the authentic proof of that payment. Basically, we are avoiding receipt of cash in our offices. We then would issue the nominated trustee with the letter of authority, and it is an essential letter that empowers that person to then act for and on behalf of that particular trust. However, then the administration of the trust would then rest in the trustees after being empowered. The master's office or the master's officials do not necessarily oversee and manage that. It is managed and administered by the trustees. The next slide, PIST. PIST was also like we started with the paperless estate administration. In the past years, we also included PIST, the ones that would be the paperless administration for trusts. And we had rolled it out to all of our 15 offices. Again, the difference between PIST and trust online registration is the fact that previously the registration required physically attending to the offices of the master, bringing the documents, bringing the proof, and requesting the registration. Now, that registration and that exercise can happen remotely without having to leave the place where somebody is to submit the documentation for registration. Next slide. In slide 16, we are dealing with insolvencies and liquidation, that it is natural persons and as well as juristic persons, companies that can find themselves in a situation with individuals and the sequestration, and with the juristic person, it is liquidations. And these can be initiated through a court application or application where companies are ceasing to exist and want to liquidate by submitting their documents to the company registration offices. Then once the sequestration orders been granted, the provisional appointments and later the final appointments.
Sorry, Advocate Mafojan. Can that Ms. Priscilla DST be taken out of the platform?
Yeah, she's making many calls.
Committee Secretary, can you take her out? Thank you. Please proceed.
Thanks. So the applications for the liquidations that are done at the courts ought to be done at a court where, if it's for an individual, the sequestration, that individual must either be, that court must either be having jurisdiction over him by virtue of being resident or carrying on business, or is on the jurisdictional basis that the court will have. Similarly with the companies, the liquidation thereof. So it is not a choice of which Masters High Court we want to go and have the liquidation process attended to. Therefore, we will bring it to Pretoria because we want to take it to the Pretoria. The High Court of Pretoria must have jurisdiction over the matter in terms of the law around that particular person and or company. And then we oversee the process within the confines of the law. The next slide. During about 2019-20, in that financial year, it was seen necessary that the information on company liquidations be taken from what we in the past were using as a dashboard to ICMS, just to provide information in the public that people can follow and know who are the liquidators appointed, whether indeed a company has been liquidated, and that information is available on ICMS. The next slide, the Guardians Fund. The Guardians Fund, as I indicated, is established by Chapter 5 of the Administration of Estates Act. And these offices of the Guardians Fund currently are in 6 of the masters' offices, being Bloemfontein, Kimberley, PMB, Grahamstown, and Pretoria. We have tried to, and in our structure for the future, have planned and are wishing to have the Guardians Fund services roll out countrywide. We are in the immediate future trying to see whether we cannot in the next financial year or calendar year ensure that maybe we set up a Guardians Fund services in Nelspruit, but to deal with those services for starters on matters that will commence going forward. We will not necessarily go back until we have made a point sure that we have resourced that office appropriately. So in the next slide, the purpose of the Guardians Fund basically is to protect the funds of minors and persons lacking legal competency and capacity, and the people who are absent or are untraceable heirs, and that provision is in the section 86 of the Administration of Estates Act. Now, the Guardians Fund would then receive monies on behalf of people who at that stage are not in a position to for particularly minors, that it will be kept there at an interest rate for these minors without any charge to them. Now, what has since been part of a bit of an abuse of the funds that are in the Guardians Fund would be where in liquidation matters, the liquidators would want to say they can trace the beneficiaries or former employees, and then they want to deposit that money in terms of relying on this section. And our point basically has been, if they have the unions and were represented in the process, these could be traceable. So we administer the funds in the Guardians Fund free of charge and no administration costs, and the interest rate, it's fairly comparable, and it's compound interest. And we can mention that in the last, I think, 10 years, the Guardians Fund has had a good audit report. It has never dropped the ball, and we hope going forward we should do that. We did not celebrate this. We did not share this with many people. And these are some of the smaller positive things that an institution like ourselves that suffers this reputational challenge ought to share these gains and benefits. In the next slide, MOVIT is the master's own verification information system, as we would know that many people would want to take a chance insofar as trying to access funds which they do not belong to them and try to steal the identity of people. We are linked to the Home Affairs with the system so that we can ensure whoever we are serving is indeed who he claims to be. The completed application for the funds are lodged directly with the 6 offices, or where the person cannot travel to those offices, then to the various magistrates' offices or to the linked master's offices like Tata for the Correctional, and then those documents are then transferred to and taken to the relevant office, and the payment is done EFT. And through that way, we are covering and saving many of the vulnerable in a safer and a quicker way. Important, we need to ensure that their banking details are not compromised. So we, in this current year, have embarked and partnered with our ISM, our IT section, to try and develop a system that will ensure, in fact, this process started in the previous financial year, to develop a financial process that will manage, a financial system basically that will manage the Guardian's funds, to ensure basically that accuracy and better and quicker computation and calculation and provision of records and reports. We are envisaging to develop and finalize this in the financial year 2022-2023. The tender has been done in this year. Of importance is how the migration of the information that is currently in the manual system has to be taken, and we need to make sure, and hence we gave ourselves proper time so that we don't cause a situation where we take in garbage. Obviously it's going to cause garbage out. And that's why we are very cautious and want to take appropriate time, and gave the service provider that timeline. The new system will be fully financial system, which will ensure accurate financial statements and management. And the move will fully financial system will guarantee accurate records, as I have earlier stated. The last but one area is in the next slide. It's in the curatorship, supervision of estates of minors and mentally ill persons, challenged persons. And the curatorship system assists usually in a variety of people of all walks of life. These are more your vulnerable people who cannot manage and administer their affairs. And this is done through the appointment of curator bonus, curator personnel, and we rely and are guided by the Mental Health Act. Tutors are appointed, and curators also, whether in cases of asset forfeiture matters, the curators, though the process happens at court, the appointment letter has to be issued by the master. The next slide, our automation. In the general, we have placed and have provided information on our departmental website. And in that website, we have placed the information relating to the various forms, contact details of all the offices, the Chief Master's Directive, information relating to unclaimed funds, and the list of liquidators. The Well portal, it's a self-help, and we need to start to really publicize and make this popular, so that part of the information that people sometimes call for or send emails about, if they were to be directed and if they knew of this, it's one drive that we need to accelerate. The next slide. Now, the current online automation progress, we are giving it more in detail there insofar as it relates to trust online and the deceased online. As it can be clearly seen, we are at where we are to test both these. The user acceptance testings are in progress, both in trust online and in the deceased online. Next slide. The risks that are outlined here are the risks related to the information that relates to the automation progress that I have dealt with in the previous slide. So our IT team in their development process shared with us this and are giving an indication of the risks, the impact of those risks and the proposed mitigation. We are fairly satisfied that we might win in this situation and ensure that piloting and rollout should take place in the proposed time during the month of September. We want to close Q2 having commenced and, if possible, also close the piloting and starting to prepare for the rollout. In the next slide, we indicating the part of the other challenges or issues that are related to that modernization and the challenges relating to the people that we need to get their assistance from, the current dispute of SETA on the utilization of maintenance and support. The IT guys know much more than myself around these challenges, but there are proposed mitigations that, from what they told us and their engagement with the management at SETA, we believe this will then yield the desired results. The next slide outlines an intervention that, in line with the new management approach in the department, to try and ensure that we include and ensure that many of our senior managers from our level 13, 14 and 15 do really lead and manage in various situations. So we have formed the working groups and titled or assigned a title to each of the working groups, informed by the nature of the work they must do for a particular quarter. So one of the working groups that we have formed, and these are constituted by the heads of offices in the master's branch. Not all will be in the same group, so that we divide this responsibility, and some are chaired by the chief directors. The chief master plays a role of overseeing all of these working groups and participate in the decision and ensuring that there is ongoing progress. So the first working group is the Insolvency and Insurance Bond Working Group. The 3 tasks that they were assigned for Q2 was to take over from what used to serve as a steering committee on insolvencies. And then the next important task was to prepare a list and record of companies that are insurance companies that are issuing bonds of security in liquidation and deceased estates. We need to monitor that and have a proper record. And then the other aspect is also along the very same issue of the companies that are issuing suretyship or bonds of sureties to either the trustees, the liquidators. We are trying to take a decision around the process of their substitution. We may even need to source for a legal opinion. Now, on the other side is the deliverables. What are they expected to deliver? We outline in each of the tasks that are assigned. So they will form a project kind of an arrangement and work within the 3 months. And at the end of the quarter, in the last meeting of the branch meeting, that's when they can, as a branch leadership, decide whether or not the duty has been concluded, we assign a new one, or we need to extend given the factors that are at play. In the next slide, there's a curatorship and guidance fund working group. This also will cover work related to the work that is done by the under the trusts. And we have outlined the tasks and the deliverables. I will not necessarily go into the details of thereof. They are self-explanatory, and I will maybe, if there are questions, elaborate further on them. Safe to say, we have launched, and we believe this is a groundbreaking request that we have submitted, and this was done in November of 2019. A section 96.2, my apologies, Chair, I see it's written C 96.2, it should have meant SECs for section 96.2 of the Administration of Deceased Estates Act. We have requested the Judge President to help us in matters that are relating to issues where in bodily injury claims against the Road Accident Fund, the award that is given to the claimant or the plaintiff gets agreed upon and a settlement agreement is made, an order of court. In that settlement agreement, they are then saying the plaintiff cannot manage his or her affairs. But then they say they envisage to register or formulate a trust which must be registered with the master. So we saw a challenge and a problem relating to the rules pertaining to curatorship now being extended to trust, where the proper control and accounting that should happen under curatorship is not happening because under trust, the administration is in the hand of the trustees. So it is that challenge that we want to minimize and protect the welfare and the benefits of those claimants. Similarly, this applies to the medical negligence cases where even a child who's awarded a substantial amount, it's now in a trust instead of having been in a curatorship where it can better be managed. I just touched that one as an example. I will be moving to the next slide. I wouldn't be going into details with each and every.
How many slides are left, Advocate Mafojan?
Chair, I am going up to 41. I'm left with about 9, Chair.
Because at this rate, we are going to stay here for the whole day.
Yeah, no.
I will not deal with the all of the actions and the outcomes on the working groups, Chair. I will try to quickly move faster towards the end. Let's move to the next slide that deals with key priorities. Yes. Key priority for us is to roll out the trust online and the deceased online, to develop the system in the Guidance Fund, and to embark on the amendments of the Trust Properties Control Act, Administration of Estates Act, as well as the Insolvency Act. These are 3 old, particularly the Insolvencies Act. The next slide outlines the risks that we are having and that we have identified and shared with the risk within the department is the unstable and unreliable network, cyber crimes attacks on the Guardians Fund monies, and the resurgence of the pandemic. This is a difficult time to manage. And the next slide relates to the capacity challenges within the branch. I have mentioned the challenge and the situation under the trusts, the abuse of these trusts. and the cloud or the gray area where community trusts are somewhat broad within the trust registration. In the next slide, we are dealing with the mitigation of those challenges. We want to put upfront training of our middle managers. We realize that also our support staff necessarily need to be sensitive to the nature of the people that we are serving. They are the most vulnerable. We are having a bigger challenge around the unstable network, but we are mindful of the fact that there's much done around that. And in the next slide, we are prioritizing our online development, and its benefit, we believe, will be much more helpful. We can move to the next slide insofar as the changes in legislation. What really informs it and what we want to achieve is to really, the deceased estate still talks about the checks and all that. These are things that we want to ensure that we are aligned to the changes and the development, and Insolvency Act and the Companies Act. There's a process that was trying to consolidate the two to be under one legislation. And then in the next slide, this I'm not going to go to details. We outlines our key risks, and I can just mention that it's the potential for fraud and corruptions, and the failure for us to meet our targets in the trust area, and the unreliable and slow network, as well as the capacity that is not up to standard. In the next slide, we are outlining what has happened at the end of the first quarter, the extent to which we had tried to mitigate those challenges. And we are aware that the resurgence of the COVID-19 creates backlogs, which ultimately result in people being unhappy. Basically, Chair, that then brings me to the end of the presentation. That's the state of this affair within the branch. Challenging as it may be, I am hopeful that the few that I see in the branch, I can lead to turn around this image and reputation that it has. Thank you.
Chair, with your permission, this is the presentation.
Chair, are you still want to speak? Do you still want to speak?
No, thanks, Chair. I was just saying, here's the presentation. You can take it from here.
Thank you very much. There has been a request from many stakeholders that this presentation be shared with them. If you can facilitate that, Committee Secretary, it will be much appreciated. I'm not sure whether DG I'm not sure whether DG and the Chief Master, you are aware that you are expected to manage an organization in crisis. Are you?
To an extent, Chair.
I have noted the following hands, Honorable Jele, Honorable Janji, Honorable Self, Honorable Nevo Drachens, in that order. Honorable Jele.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, without waste of time, let me just get into the questions that I wanted to raise this morning. Progress is very little, but it's noted. And But Chair, I am very much disappointed on the issues, on the areas of vacancies that the department should have considered. In fact, as you are mentioning that, Chairperson, the organization is really in crisis. These are the areas that the department must, the master's office must consider first, because there is no way that we are going to see progress and progress in many areas if these vacancies are not filled. We are still talking about recruitment. Next time, Chairperson, let's just get a report where these vacancies are filled, especially masters in Nelspruit, in Thohoyandou, and also in the coastal operations. We need those vacancies to be filled. Otherwise, Chairperson, we are not going anywhere. These problems will go on, and our people on the ground don't have time. They've been waiting for these services for so long, and they cannot afford to be delayed anymore. Chairperson, also on the area of training, would love to see the presenter is just telling us that they are going to do something, especially in the middle management, members on the middle management space. But Chairperson, training must just be a thing of yesterday, because the question would be, it is not done, yes, but when do they think they would be able to do that, adhere to the promise that they have given us, that there will be a training in that area? Because those are the areas that we have to make sure that, Chairperson, they are taken care and they assist us to go forward. Also, I'm having in fact, I would like more information on the issues of REF, Chairperson. On that, it was reported that there was a problem, particularly on the practitioners, those who were deliberately avoiding legal processes when dealing with the matters of processing the claims. So I would request that they give us progress, exactly what is happening in that area also. Another one will be on the insolvency policy. It was planned, Chairperson, that on the 30th of March 2021, there was supposed to be a submission of this policy for approval to the minister. Has it been done? And if so, when do we expect implementation of that policy, Chair? Also in the offices in Tshwane, Chairperson, there were 3 officials which were involved in corruption. We would just want to hear from the department, have those officials been arrested for taking bribe in on the letters of authority, on issuing of the letters of authority? So can they give us information also on that one? Because we are not tolerating the issues of corruptions. We are, it's that office, Chairperson, it has always been in trouble. So can we make sure that even the issues of corruptions are dealt with speedily? On the issues of security and monitoring mechanisms, Chairperson, on the branches, it was reported long, Chairperson, that there were files that were missing and also some they were banned. We just want to find out, Chairperson, that information, that data, is there any effort in recouping or finding out exactly, and how is that going to be done if it's possible? And the issues of security are very important in these branches in order to make sure that corruption, fraud are dealt with. Chair. I think also I would want to take a bite on the issues of the recommendation of the SIU. There were investigations which took place by the SIU. I just want to find out from the presenters about the preliminary recommendations. Were they adhered to, or did they address maybe that issue? And also, if there is a final report on and those issues, on those recommendations by the office of the SIU or the SIU chairperson, do we have any report? And if there are issues that they were supposed to take care of, has they been taken care of in terms of the recommendation of the SIU? Lastly, Chairperson, if we can get also an update on the issues of cyber security breach at the master's offices, especially in Pietermaritzburg, which led to the office to be shut down of the system and payments. The services were disrupted, Chairperson, in that area. Can we get maybe an update on that one? But I will stop there, Chairperson, just to allow other members also to come in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jale. Honorable Janji.
Nkosi Sihlalo, thank you very much. Let me also, I'll be very brief, Chair. I have a different request that I want to make so that I save your time. Let me first appreciate and thank the DM and his team and the DG for this very comprehensive presentation on the Master's Office. I must just indicate that what this presentation helps us with, Chair, it is a presentation in summary that is showing planning improvements. That's what this presentation is about. They are saying to us this is how they are planning to improve this office going forward. I appreciate that, but the request I want to make, Chair, takes that into account because from where I'm sitting, the planning improvements are not adequate compared to the service that is expected of this office. I just want to, and I wouldn't want them to respond to this once I table this request. It's a request that I'm going to share with the committee secretary, but it will also go to the minister in the form of written questions, because in the minister, I'm expecting that within 10 days, I'll be getting a response on these issues. And here it is, Chair. I want to request, Chair, that we ask the DG and his team on this Master's Office that they come back to us through you, Chair, and present what I call a success failure chart, success and performance chart. In other words, I am interested, Chair, that this Master's Office, what Mr. Mafojani was presenting, because there's something big missing. I'm interested in how this office, as we speak currently, is of service to those who need it, is of service to those who are phoning every day and doing all of those kind of things. So I would want that and I won't raise all of these as I'm going to put them in writing to the Secretary and the Minister. Maybe something like this chart must say to us in a given week, these are the kind of registered needs and requests that we get in all of these categories. And the speed to which we respond to those, what are the delays? What are the complete failures? Because it's only when you have a sense of how this office is performing that we then are able to say, was ours, Chair, and this is the point you always make, as an oversight body, our duty is about the impact the public funds are doing to those that need it, to those that are entitled to it, in this case of the Master's Office. It is fine and good that they have to plan how they deliver that service. And today, that's what they were presenting. They were saying to us, this is how we're planning to deliver the service. I'm interested in the first question, Chair, before that planning, as to, because you are not planning from a vacuum. There are families, there are people who are in dire need of this service. That part is missing in this presentation. This is what I'm asking, Chair, that we get that. They quantify these kind of amounts. They tell us what are the reasons for the delay, where there are reasons for delay, or complete failure, where there's complete failure. Issues of the financial as well as non-financial kind of performance of the Master's Office. Because the important thing is that you want to look in this current service vis-a-vis this. So I would want us to get that kind of a full presentation, because if I have to assess the register of risk and mitigation, I must compare it with how this office is performing in all of these 15 offices that we're told. So without wasting your time, I won't go into the details about the subsections of the issues that I want to ask, but this is my request. And once they send that back to us, to this committee, Chair, we then should be in a position to call them back, and then they answer these specific issues as compared to, so by then we would have this plan. It's a nice plan to have, but I've run out of patience, Chair, for plans. Forgive me for that, but where I am, the only patience I have is to what extent are you performing what you are being paid for? Or put it this way, for what you are highly paid for in this instance, as these kind of officials. So as I said, Chair, I want to put that down. So tomorrow I'll be sending those questions to the Minister. I'll be sending those also to see our Secretary. So the department must then respond to a whole list of issues in all of these categories. Because I can only be in a position to pose questions when they indicate to us, this is where we fail, this is how we're succeeding, this is where the problems are, where we need help. Because I would even, part of the other question, sub question I'm asking is, when we deal with issues of budget cuts, to what extent is this fund affected by those? People will speak about savings. Is this area providing that kind of category of savings to certain things, and yet because you might have savings, and when there are people who are not getting what is due to them, which they queue every day in this Master's Office, every week, every month, you have this. This presentation is not giving us that picture. I am eager to get that picture, Chair, and it is on the basis of that picture that would then say, we are either happy or not happy with the performance of the Master's Office. It is very abstract from where I am at this point in time. I thank you, Chair. I pause there.
Thank you very much, Honorable Janji. Honorable, who's next? I think it's Honorable Self.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. I would like to follow on from the Honourable Janki, because he was alluding to systemic failure at many of the Master's offices. And that is of such a nature, in my experience, that ordinary people are simply unable to either make contact with the correct official who should assist them, or in the event that they are in contact with the official, they the assistance that they get is not necessarily forthcoming. People are typically sent from pillar to post, and email correspondence or attempts to make telephone contact are invariably unsuccessful. So I like the plan that was presented by the Chief Master, and I think in due course things will improve. But while these issues are being addressed, a safety net should urgently be created that would enable people to report their need for assistance in a formal manner, in such a way that there's a reasonable expectation that they will be assisted. And in the light of this, I'd like to ask the department, will the department maybe look into setting up a helpline for those who are left unattended by the Master's office, a central point at which this can be reported, and from where the Department of Justice, all the Office of the Chief Master, can ensure proper assistance. And while I'm on that subject, it would be very good, in my experience, if we were able to have a dedicated email address that we as members of Parliament could send complaints to the Master, because they get inundated with requests for assistance, and there's no ready entry point into the offices. And then finally, Chairperson, I know that the Master is an established office within our systems, but it strikes me as incongruent that we have a Master. What happens if a female person was appointed to the position? Would that be a mistress of the High Court? I feel sure that in due course we should think about a new title for this office that is gender friendly. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Self. Honorable Nieuwoudt Drachen.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. And thank you to the department for the presentation. I would like to add my voice to Honorable Janki's comments for us to get answers related to the services that are actually rendered to the people. It's very nice to read, there are 402 service points, and 290 service points will be rolled out. But when we're seeing on the chat that it's not actually happening, the services are not actually going to the people, emails and phone calls are left unanswered. So we would like to see from the questions that Honorable Janki will be sending, that we can get the actual picture of what's going on in the office. The presentation, the plans are lovely, but what's actually happening out there is a problem. And our late Honorable Jackie Mufokeng raised the issues with the Master's office, very often. For example, why must a child write to the presidency, to the president, to ask for help? Because the Master's office did not assist that child. I would also like to know, are the service points of the Master's office fully equipped and what are they, or what do they need to be equipped with in order to render the services? So are the service points equipped to render the services completely? I would also like to know, is there any public awareness going out, or public awareness campaigns? Do people know the work that the Master's Office does, all the different work that the Master's Office does, all the different services that are provided? Do you have public awareness campaigns? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nipot Drachen. DJ.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much. And we have noted these questions, and indeed some of them are a leaf of wisdom. I think that we will take the part from Honorable Self. The name, we have started the debate because this name is a relic of the colonial era. Countries worldwide, even the Brits, no longer use masters. So the female masters of the High Court are called masters. They're not called mistress. As we have them even in Cape Town and other places. So we are working on that. The call center, I think we're building on it. We'll want to have a call center that can work until 8 p.m. and start early in the morning, and specifically as well, make sure that there's a dedicated focus on master services. So part of what we have done in the courts, as you enter the court, you'll see the name of the court manager as well as the area court manager, and ultimately the name of the regional head. So we're working on having the same arrangement, that at the service points, the details of the chief master, the details of the masters of the High Court are provided. That will be the mobile phone as well as the email address. But I think from this sitting today, we will go and set up an email address, chiefmaster@justice.gov.za, so that members of the public who will want to elevate to the chief master. I know it's not going to be easy. I did the same, created DG@Justice, and my inbox every day is always flooded with members of the public. But we try our best to do to attend to those concerns. Honorable Maseko Jele, the issue of vacancies. You'll recall, maybe I must link this to Honorable Janchi about what we presented here. We could have come here and say, this is how much we're doing, this is how good we are. The planning part should be understood within the context of the directive that came from this committee to try and turn around the department. So the masters, as you will know, the chief master was appointed last year in November, and I started in March. So part of what you will be seeing from us, and I think Honorable Janchi, to be fair and honest, you also raised the same point yesterday about the other presentation. So you will be seeing more of this because we have a mandate from this committee to turn around the department, to develop a turnaround plan, which we do have. And so that's why you are seeing more and more the department projecting that this is what we're doing. But I do take the point, and in 10 days when you have asked that question to the minister, we'll do reflect. There are success stories. We do get emails from members of the public who thank us for the services that are being provided. So it's not all doom and gloom. There's work that is being done, but it's, at the same time with our plans, I think we appreciate your comments. Honorable Velma, the public education part, we are ramping it up. You will see from the departmental MTSF plan, the 5-year plan for the electoral period, public education has been elevated to be part of the 10 strategic objectives across the different areas. I was in Kimberley over the weekend, and everywhere we have these outreaches, make sure that the masters is there and members of the public are educated about the work of the masters. It's just at the beginning. I'm not saying it's enough, but we specifically focus on public outreach, including now the awareness around the unclaimed funds, particularly from the Guardian Fund. I can't remember if we did reflect that we have about 2 billion that is not claimed. So we have agreed to embark on a campaign to let members of the public know that there's masters, there's guardian fund, and all these other services. But the question about the insolvency policy, I think I must just mention that it's not only about the insolvency policy, but broadly, if you look at the legislations that are governing the work of masters, all of them, they were passed, or in the main, they were passed during the British colonial era. So as part of that commitment to review, replace, and repeal the apartheid and colonial era legislations, we are looking at all of them. And of course, part of it is going to be dependent on the program, the legislative program of this committee. Chief Master, you can deal with the other issues.
Thanks, DG. I think I'm now visible, Chair.
You are finally visible. I think members of the public must take your picture.
The one question that I would go to directly, Chair.
Well, the chief master is visible after an hour, so you can imagine how long does it take for people to be helped.
It was just a small technicality on my side, switching off the video of the camera of my laptop. The one question perhaps that came from Honorable Jelle related to the 3 officials in the Masters of Pretoria that were reported in the news that they were involved in corruption. We have suspended 2 of the 3. We have completed a disciplinary hearing of 1 of those 3. We are about to commence with disciplinaries. I think the summons are to be, the notice is to be served on them by our HR on labor. So we are basically taking action against them. It went up to the level of a deputy master. We were disappointed to find that up to that level, we have officials who can behave in this way, but we did not spare her. We are sharing the view of the government that we will not tolerate corruption. The SIU preliminary recommendations, we have received where they were requesting for the corrective action or disciplinary process that they recommended against 10 of the officials. This has been accepted and referred to our HR. Of the 8 are to be connected and dealt with together arising from the Bosasa matter. One of the senior amongst them, we have already secured the appointment of a counsel to deal with that matter. So basically we are not sparing anyone once we have a recommendation and a report, and we have interrogated it and shared the view that indeed it isn't. Part of the bigger challenge again during the time when SIU continues to receive requests or referrals or reports, it's where they are to then get the file, and in the meantime when the file is there, whether you can give any other person originals or copies from, sorry, not originals, copies from that file, because now you are either left with copies, they want to work on the original. It creates a bit of a challenge, but we are acting on its recommendations and report. The only one recommendation that we could not effect, which was very late when, not late in that we failed. I think SIU started February 2020, they wanted to recommend the suspension of somebody to can hamper their process. As DG properly indicated, one came into the space in November of 2020 when I dealt with the reports and progress on the SIU and saw this in the end December, beginning January. It was quite clear that to try to give effect to that suspension could be late, but I inquired as to what has happened and why it was not effected, but it would seem at that time it was also received some few months later, which then made it difficult to can implement. However, there has not been a complaint from the SIU that they did not manage to continue with the investigation hampered by that particular person. I agree with the DG on the issue of the title of the name. We are still utilizing that name of master, but it should be changed and given an appropriate title. The questions from Honorable Janji, he said we will have to deal with them later, and I think that would also perhaps help in elaborating and touching on part of the other reason. And I was advised by the Director General, and I could not add the slide later or present a different presentation from what I had shared, was around just indicate perhaps, Chief Master, since you came in this 10 months, what are the key things that you think you have done within that period? But I did not do that, include that, but maybe in the next time when we are to give our progress, we will move from planning and indicate what have we done or achieved by the time we shall be coming back. I also want to add on the publicity drive. I think for sure we need to beef up the way we publicize our services. I think we utilize only the Wales Week more prominently than any other, but the whole host of information that is on our web portal, if we don't make people aware, they will not know of. And some of the basic inquiries they are doing, that info is in our web portal. So we take guidance and we accept that we will have to beef up and ramp up this publication and tell people the link and go to the Department of Justice website, get this information. Don't just get the info to contact. The info that is there goes beyond the contact of the person. It goes to even some of the questions that people wanted to ask. So that's basically the add on that. The services from the question of Honorable Nivo Drachen about whether the service points are rendering full services. No, for now, the people that are saving from there basically are more our general clerks that are in the courts that were assigned to deal with estates. They would not have the capacity to issue these letters. They are not, some of them even legally qualified to be appointed to do that. They are just serving as a link to receive the document, forward it through the link that is there between their system and the office of the master close by, so that that information can then be attended to and necessary appointment letters be done. Thanks. I hope I've covered all outstanding.
Thank you very much, Chief Master. Any closing comments, teacher?
Chairperson.
Honorable Jada.
My apology. I just wanted, I think there's something that I did not hear them responding on the issues of security.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jada. Can we respond to that?
Can I come in, Chair? I think DGI. We basically, particularly in our systems, are trying to ensure that our IT section in the department works closely with us to ensure inter alia that we prevent any of the cyber attacks, like similarly the incident that was reported in relation to Peter Maritzburg in September of 2020. But that was more even coupled with processes and systems and practices we have put in place to ensure the end of the day closing, that when they were doing that, they then found out of the attempt to attack the 10 million. And it is that follow-up and that measures that were put in place that reduced and ensured that quick and speedy action was taken to ensure the recovery of a substantial amount. I think the only amount that could not have been recovered is 36,000, but the large part of it was protected.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thanks, Chair. I was going to come after the DG, but seeing you've called me, I just sort of wanted to make some comments. Yeah, I mean, there's been the input, there's been the questions, the comments, there's been the responses. We can't deny that there's a serious problem of service delivery in the Master's office. What has not unfortunately been in the presentation is issues like how many services are currently rendered, what is the situation in each Master's office. The Chief Master and I have a meeting with Gauteng attorneys, I think it's next week, where a lot of, we will be engaging with them also on some of their suggestions. But just to say that more attention needs to be given and will be given to the issue of letters of executorship. There have been quite a few comments on the chat line regarding the amount of time taken, 8 months. Some people are saying there is the problem of more people passing away. There's also the problem that due to COVID, that mostly the Master's offices have been at 50% of the people present and working. So it's effectively half the people at any given time at work. And that's also because the Master's offices are not particularly, I mean, people are working together in big offices, so they're not particularly geared to a COVID situation. So definitely the Master and the Master's offices have to look at and what do they do in the current circumstances to speed things up. The issues of the numbers of people being assisted. I know in Durban that the issue of they will focus more on the people walking in, and I've raised it with the Chief Master, people walking in rather than the attorneys who they think they can interact with electronically. But that doesn't always happen. So really what I'm saying is we understand that there are serious problems there and we'll be working, ensuring that the Master's office does attend to them and ensure that there is an improvement under the current COVID circumstances. I noticed also some of the comments on the chat line were complaints about the Mbombela office, phones not working and a lack of service delivery. The Chief Master had spent some time in Mbombela a month or so ago, and I don't know if he would want to just comment on what steps he's taken, but it's clear that more needs to be done if people are still complaining. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Chief Master, do you want to comment on that?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I may add, it was part of what I had said in some of the achievements that one would have done in the last 10 months since taking office. In Nelspruit, there was a serious problem, Chair. So serious was the problem, and the rumor that was rife there, which probably could have been true, was around the fact that the delays are meant to try and extort money from the people. And that pained me. We have taken 2 officials to intervene and change the situation and lead the team there, change the nature and the culture of doing the work. We are satisfied with the interventions that they have brought since about the first week of May, the 5th of May. The greater part of May, June, they were really organizing and understanding and setting up the situation. Results are yielding, positive results are coming through. People are now, even the morale in the staff is getting better. The Attorneys Association local, they are starting to interact and are giving a feedback to be saying, this intervention team should not be a hit and run, try to keep it and stabilize. We took them there because there was no head of office in the Master Nelspruit. The one that left under a cloud and is in jail. And the recruitment process, we needed a person who's not only competent, but ethical. And that's where the first round, we have re-advertised. The results did not really give us a candidate that would need, but there is indeed a change and they have turned the corner, and we believe much more of positive feedback will come from that office. Thanks. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you very much. Is the DG back?
Yeah, yes, Chair.
Okay. No, I just wanted to see if you are back, DG. Do you want to say something?
Look, not much, but to say that we'll be ready, as Honorable Kubudile Jali was saying, to come back with a different presentation, but also provide that answer that he will to the question he will raise with the minister. And but just to make a point that we are focused on working on the master space. We were trying to fill all the strategic vacancies there. I met Treasury yesterday. The economic and fiscal situation in the country is not looking well, so there's no additional money that will be made available. So some of the posts, no matter how we may have wanted to fill them, they may not be filled. We'll have to see what we can do with what we have. So it's part of the bigger challenge that all government departments are facing. So as much as we'll try to improve capacity in terms of filling vacancies, it may not be possible. But the officials that we have, including through many interventions, training, and so on and so forth, we'll have to try our best and do more with the less that we have. But also generally as part of the turnaround that the Chief Master is mandated, his mandate is clear: turn around the master services, improve service delivery. So we are currently refining the department's service delivery plan, which at some points I hope we'll have an opportunity to share with the committee. So the master services is part and key of our service delivery as a department. And in terms of our service delivery improvement plan, we are clear that what we want to see in this financial year is to have an improvement of performance of up to 50%. And the following year increase it to above 80%. That's improving the performance. And in the outer years, which is your third year, we hope that then we can be at 100%. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DG. You know, DG, if you have joined Parliament in '94, like the Deputy Minister, but joined the National Assembly in '99 and the Portfolio Committee in 1999, Honorable Swart and myself, we have had a lot of these plans.
Yes, I joined in '99 with you. I was in KZN for '94, so I'm like you.
I was saying that you joined Parliament generally in '94, and then you joined the National Assembly in '99. And the Portfolio Committee in '99. Since then, we have been hearing a lot of these plans. So pardon us if we have a fatigue in terms of hearing. Honorable Ngola, can you mute yourself? Because the challenge is plans are good. They they are necessary for you to verbalize what you are thinking and you want to implement. But if nothing changes, then they are useless. We read your presentation yesterday as members, but what is clear is that you only take action against people who have been corrupt, but it's not clear whether you do take action for non-performers. Just incompetency and non-performance is not clear from what we have read. And government generally, we seem to have a high tolerance level for non-performers. Generally, you will be able to prosecute 5, 10 people or take them to DC, those who have stolen money, but I still need to see people being taken out of the system for continuous non-performance, which is an upfront attack on South Africans. It's an upfront attack on South Africans and our democracy. The issue of non-performance and tolerance of that non-performance. And what we will be interested, Comrade Janji, to know that in the last, let's say, 10 years, how many people have received bonuses in the State Attorney's Office? And what is the basis for that bonus when the institution is collapsing? But I'm quite sure that there has been a lot of people who have received bonuses. DM, this organization or branch, it's one branch that is really an irritation. Even the late Honorable Mohammed, even on the day he died, he was from the master's office bitterly complaining about chaos that is there. Honorable Mfokeng, same thing, bitterly complaining about the chaos that is there. Now we have a slide or we have a presentation from page 1 until around page 12. You are presenting to us Act of Parliament that we know that we have passed. We know the Guardian Fund, what it needs to do. That is in the Act, we know that. We are always interested to, as managers who have been employed, what is your diagnosis of the problem and what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? So what I would suggest to members is that we should treat this division or branch as a branch that it is in an ICU, which must report to the committee every 6 months on what they are doing. I'll be interested, Honorable Janji, in the list of those questions that you want to, in fact, I think we should be really working on the list of questions that every time they come to present to the committee, we want to see progress on the issues that we would have applied our minds to them. Because, I mean, if you listen to the presentation, which we have been very generous over to listen to it, that took a very long time, it creates an impression that everything is under control. That generally everything is normal. That branch is abnormal. It's really abnormal. And anyone who is going to tolerate that abnormality has no interest of South Africans at heart, and they will not be part of that. DG, we want to see you rooting out non-performers out of the department. We are not viewing the fact that you have been there for a few months, the chief master has been there for a few months. The department has been there for many years. Many years. This branch has been there for many years. The onslaught in terms of lack of service delivery to our people has been there for many years. Now, what we will be interacting with you much more closely, it's progress that is being made. Of course, the plans are important, but we'll link them to the progress, outcomes, and impact. Because quite clearly, then there will be no need to have parliament if we are going to accept such non-performance as normal. It cannot be. And I'm not sure, DG, whether is there a problem in your HR department? Because it is still unexplainable why filling of vacancies, even the funded vacancies, are taking so long. Why are they taking so long? Because even as Parliament, we are able to do interviews even during this COVID pandemic. We are meeting our deadlines, we are appointing commissioners, even during this time. What is preventing you as the department from filling vacancies that are funded? Because some of them, National Treasury even takes money because departments are not filling up vacancies. We have people who act permanently. And I do think that when we interact, I'm just praying that when we interact with you, when we come back in October, we are not going to have a vacancy rate of 24% or 20%, whilst our people are not being served. I am really interested in what is your HR doing. We have got a number of vacancies, even at the level of deputy masters. It's a crisis. So please, we are not going to accept a situation where people will think that we must be nice to them at the expense of service delivery. We will not. We will not. And I do encourage members like Honorable Janji to ask questions to the executive on those issues. That is what our people are expecting of us. It will be good that Honorable Janji, those questions are asked to the minister, and ministers must explain themselves why are these issues not being attended to in the departments. Now, from now, in the next 6 months, when we meet you, we would be interacting and we're expecting that you would have taken charge and you'll will be reporting progress. We don't want any preambles, we just want progress, targets, which one have been met, which one have not been met, and why. And what actions are being taken against those people who are not meeting targets. And DG would want to get information about your bonuses in the last 10 years. Thank you very much, members. Let's meet.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Let's meet on Friday. It will be subcommittee on correctional services on Friday. Thank you very much, members. I think the meeting is adjourned.
Malibongwe, Chair. Siyabonga.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much, Chair. Our indebtedness to your leadership.
Yeah, sharp DG and your team.
Thanks, Honorable Janchi.